Okay, here we are again with part 2 in ranking the horror films of 2024. I did part 1, I think, in like late August, early September, and since then there have been some banger horror films that have come out. So today we're going to include The Substance, we're going to include Terrifier 3, Smile 2, Heretic, and many more. But yeah, if you have not seen part 1, I will link the video in the description if you want to check it out. But just as a quick recap, what we have so far is that I left S blank. I have an A, I have Oddity, Late Night with the Devil, Longlegs. In B, I put In a Violent Nature, Cuckoo, Stop Motion, The First Omen, Lovely, Dark, and Deep. In C, I put Immaculate, Infested, and Maxine. And in D, I put Strangers Chapter 1 and The Deliverance. So yeah, today's going to be a little bit of a heavy one. Like I said, there's been some bangers that have come out since part 1. So I think if I'm looking at, I think we have like 12 or 13 to rank today. So strap in, buckle up as we rank these 12 or 13 horror films that have come out. So I do want to start with The Substance, but before I jump into The Substance, before I rank The Substance, I do want to add one movie that I forgot in part 1. I left it out for a reason, but I just want to very, very, very briefly, quickly drop it in here, and that is Alien Romulus. Like I said, I kept it out of part 1 for a reason, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Alien Romulus I thought was fantastic. I think the first hour is thrilling. It's exciting. I think the last like 15, 20 minutes, it becomes an action film, and I think it becomes kind of less interesting at that point. Not that it's bad or anything. I think it becomes less interesting. I think that first hour is just a roller coaster ride. The movie's putting characters in tense situations, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, Alien Romulus, I left out in part 1. Sorry about that, guys. But Alien Romulus, to me, is an A. Okay, now let's talk about The Substance. Yeah, so The Substance was the most requested film from part 1. I did part 1 before The Substance came out, so that's why it's not included in my part 1 video. But now that I've seen it, now that we're on the other side of The Substance, yeah, this movie is wild. This movie is bananas. This movie is bonkers. And I'm not even just talking about like where this movie goes, like the last 10 to 15 minutes. It is wild. It gets pretty bonkers. But I just mean it's wild in like how it's presented. Like the presentation of this film is unlike anything we've seen this year. Like how it's shot, how it's edited. It's quick. It has weird camera. It has like fisheye camera lenses. It's doing things that you typically don't see in horror. Like just from a presentation standpoint, I think this movie is unique, and it's unlike anything we've seen this year. Just from like, you know, a cinematography standpoint, an editing standpoint. But yeah. Beside that, Demi Moore is fantastic. Dennis Quaid, Margaret Qualley, they're all phenomenal. This is a plot that had its hooks in me from the get-go. This is a very, very entertaining horror film. And, man, that last 10, 15 minutes goes so hard in the paint. I wasn't the biggest fan of where it goes. I'm not a big, like, kind of B-movie monster guy, and I think this movie kind of goes there. So it didn't quite land with me. But that being said, it's not bad by any means. I'm just saying that's not really my cup of tea where this movie goes. But it's still entertaining. It's still a lot of fun. Yeah, this is one of the most unique and interesting horror films with something to say. And yeah, The Substance to me personally, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the last 10 to 15 minutes, The Substance is an S-tier horror film. It is unlike anything I've seen this year. It is phenomenal. All right, next up, Heretic. Yeah, this movie just came out, and man, what a performance from Hugh Grant. He is so good. He is just chewing this role up. And what's cool about his character is that, you know, horror villains, I think, you know, a lot of directors go out of their way to make their villains scary or spooky or add prosthetics and blood and all this, but they don't do that here in Heretic. Like, his character is like the nicest guy in the world. He's polite, he's kind, but there's something bubbling underneath him. There's something going on with him. You don't know what his angle is. You don't know what his motives are. You're just like, where is this going? And I think that's such a cool idea for a villain. Like, he's not oozing out he's not murdering people, and like he's not Art the Clown. You know, he's like the opposite of Art the Clown. And I think that makes him just a little bit, you know, a little bit scarier than most villains. But yeah. This movie had me on the edge of my seat. I love that this movie is mostly people in rooms just talking about heavy ideas. This is a movie with, you know, a battle of ideas, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. I'm not really a religious person, but I found a lot of the monologues and the diatribes about religion to be very interesting and thought-provoking. But I love this movie. I thought this was a thrill ride, one of the best horror films of the year. We're going to give Heretic... we're going to put Heretic in the A. All right. You guys ready for Art the Clown? You guys ready? Let's do Art the Clown. All right, here he is, the big bad boy himself, Art the Clown, with Terrifier 3. This was one of the most highly anticipated horror films of the year. Terrifier has a massive fan base, and I am one of them. I love the Terrifier franchise. Terrifier 2 is my favorite of the franchise. I'm actually wearing a Terrifier 2 hoodie right now. Yeah, this movie was fantastic, and the fact that they said it during Christmas was a smart idea. This is one of those movies that's going to be put on every Christmas. Yeah, it's fantastic. The kills are on point and interesting and fascinating, and just like there are some kills that are just like, oh, how do you even come up with this stuff? I saw this in a packed theater, and it was a blast to watch with other people. A lot of laughing, a lot of like groaning, a lot of cheering. It was just a fun time at the theater, and I think it's just a fun movie overall. I love what they do with Sienna. Sienna's still one of the best final girl. Art the Clown gets all the credit, but I think Sienna is right up there with Art the Clown. I think she's fantastic. And I really love how this movie, in like the last, 10 minutes or so, the movie becomes an action movie, and I was not expecting that. I wanted to get up and cheer. I was like, I can't believe I'm watching an action fight set piece right now. It was so freaking cool, and I love the cliffhanger. We're going to get more. Yeah, Terrifier 3 was one of the most memorable horror films I saw this year. I'm going to watch this year over year, and yeah, Terrifier 3 to me is S. Speak No Evil. Yeah, the American remake of a movie with the same name that came out a couple years ago. And man, I will say that this horror film hits me harder than most horror films. I can relate to this movie in the sense that, like, I am an overly polite person. I am the kind of person where if you step on my toes, I apologize to you. Or if someone like cuts in front of me in line, I'm like, it's okay. Maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they didn't see that there was a line. I don't know. That's the kind of person that I am, and that's what this movie is kind of exposing. It's like, how nice can you be? How can people take advantage of that, and how far will you let that go? Yeah, this movie kind of hit me hard. I think personally, I probably would have done things differently in this movie, but obviously there is a limit, and this family's limit goes a little further than what I would allow. But it's still a fascinating take on politeness and how that can be exploited, and for all the wrong reasons. I am bummed that this American version changed the ending. The original ending to, the original is so dark and bleak, and just, it's one of the most memorable horror films one of the most memorable endings to a horror film. It was just like so depressing. And this movie, they kind of make it, in quotes, a happy ending. But the original ending is not a happy at all. It's like the opposite of happy. So I was kind of bummed that they changed the ending, but I can kind of see why. But overall, great performance from James McAvoy. I think this movie becomes a lot of fun in like the last 30 minutes when it becomes kind of like a house invasion film. I thought that portion of the film was a blast. But yeah, a lot of fun. I'm gonna go B on Speak No Evil. Smile 2. This was actually a surprise for me. I wasn't really looking forward to this film. I thought the first one was fine. I thought it was unique and interesting concept, but I wasn't like, oh, I need more Smile movies. So when this was announced, I was like, okay, cool, another one. But man, this movie really surprised me. This movie is very good. Naomi Scott, man, oh my gosh. I think her and Hugh Grant deserve Oscar nominations for the performances. They're not going to get them because the Academy hates, horror for some reason. But man, she is doing God's work here. She is phenomenal. She is worth watching this movie alone. Her performance is just a revelation. She is amazing in this film. And ultimately, I think what Smile 2 does everything that Smile does, but just better. Like it has a better protagonist. It has a better story. It has better jump scares. Like everything that Smile does, this one just does better. I think this is a better movie. I thought this movie was fantastic. I've said in my review that I'm pushing 40. Jump scares are not really my favorite thing in the world because it makes me feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. And I felt that way many times throughout this movie. I jokingly said that I felt like this movie was actively trying to kill me because I felt like I was going to have a heart attack every 10 to 15 minutes of this movie because there's so many jump scares. I'm not really a big jump scare guy. That's kind of the big critique I have with this movie is there's way too many. And I'm more of an atmosphere, mood kind of horror guy. I like a lot of stuff that comes out of A24. The jump scare stuff is fun, I guess, but man, I can't really hang with it anymore. I'm getting old. But anyways, yeah, Smile 2 was a lot of fun. I'm going to put Smile 2 in the A category. Blink twice. This poster says, "Are you having a good time?" And yeah, I thought it was a good time. Great performance from Channing Tatum and the whole cast, actually. The whole cast is amazing in this movie. This is a movie that I appreciate and that it keeps all of its cards close to its chest. You don't really know what's going on for most of this movie until like the third act is when you finally know like what's actually happening, and what's actually happening is pretty disturbing and off-putting. It's one of those endings where you're either going to be on board with it or you're not. I was pretty on board with it. I thought it was pretty gross and was not expecting it to go where it does. But yeah, this is a movie that keeps you guessing and keeps you questioning. You're like, why is this person acting weird? What's going on? I love movies like that. Once the reveal happens, though, this is one of those kind of movies where it's fun to watch once. I don't know if it's going to be fun to watch twice. I've only seen it once, but that first viewing I thought was a lot of fun. Not the best thing in the world, not the worst, but are you having a good time? Yeah, it's a good time. That Blink Twice was a good time. We're going to put Blink Twice in the B. All right, VHS Beyond, the latest entry in the VHS franchise. Yeah, this one was pretty good. I think they swung for the fences on this one with making it specifically about aliens and the extraterrestrials. And I think it mostly works. I think there are some memorable segments here. I think the two that stand out to me are the skydiving one and the one at the end with Alana Pierce, who, her character finds, a spacecraft in the desert. I thought those two were standouts, and the other ones, they were fine. They're not the best in the world, but they're entertaining enough that where I didn't feel like this movie was that long. I felt like they're entertaining enough that it felt like a pretty cohesive and fun time. But yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about these movies, though, is that even if you're not having the best time with some of the segments, it doesn't really matter because 5-10 minutes later you're going to get onto the next one. That's kind of the beauty of these films. But yeah, VHS Beyond, it's not my favorite of the franchise, but it's far from the worst. We're going to give VHS Beyond in the B. A lot of Bs. All right, we need to talk about Mads. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not seen Mads, watch Mads. Mads is phenomenal. This is a phenomenal horror film. I love this movie. This movie rules. This is a horror film that is one continuous camera shot. It's not really. It's like 4 or 5 camera shots strung together digitally to make it look like one continuous shot. But man, it is effective. This is a movie that takes place in one night. It's one continuous shot. And man, this movie is batshit insane. It goes to some crazy places. And the fact that they did it in just a handful of shots and strung it together is just a cinematic achievement. I love this movie. If you have not seen Mads or heard of it, don't even watch a trailer. Just go in blind. It's a lot of fun. It's very gory. I love where this movie ends. I'm not going to spoil, I'm not going to spoil any of the plot here because I think the less you know, the better. Just throw it on and have a great time like I did. This is a roller coaster of a movie, and it's a blast. To me, Mads is right up there at the top with the S. This is an S-tier horror film. I love the crap out of it. Okay, let's talk about Salem's Lot, I guess. I didn't read the book, so I can't really speak on like whether or not this movie is, book accurate. This movie was fine. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just kind of a blah movie. This is the kind of movie that goes one ear out the other. This is a movie you watch and you're like, I guess that was okay, and then you just forget you forgot you watched it by the next day. Yeah, like I said, not the worst thing in the world. It's just kind of just blah. It's one of those blah movies. There are some set pieces that I enjoy. There's a set piece towards the end of the movie that takes place at a drive-in. And I thought that set piece was a lot of fun. Some cool, interesting ideas, but overall, it was fine. So to me, Salem's Lot goes in the... I don't think it's quite D. We're going to put Salem's Lot in the C category. All right, it's Sleep Time. Man, what a cool movie. This is a movie that makes sleepwalking scary, which, it's a cool concept, and they do a pretty good job. And what's cool about this movie is that, I thought that, Sleepwalking is scary is the only trick this movie had up its sleeve, but it doesn't. This movie actually, it starts that way. If like the first 30 to 40 minutes is sleepwalk is scary. There's some creepy moments. But then the movie pivots into like psychological horror. So if you like movies like Black Swan or Enemy, like psychological horror films, if that's your cup of tea, then you really need to watch Sleep, because Sleep is a phenomenal, psychological horror film. Dude, the climax of this movie is so damn entertaining. It is like on the edge of your seat type of climax. It was just like, oh my gosh. It all just culminates with this one, 10 to 15 minute conversation between two characters, and it is riveting. Yeah, Sleep is fantastic. If you have not seen Sleep, please go check it out. It is great. We're going to put Sleep in the A. All right, we're down to our last two here, and one of them is Daddy's Head, which is, kind of an unfortunate title for a movie, to say the least. But no, this movie was pretty good. It's a Shudder original. This is a movie where I thought I knew what I was getting. It's a movie about grief, about this woman and her child who loses the father figure, and there's there's some conflict between them. And I thought, I was like, okay, this is a movie where they're gonna see their dad. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe a demon's kind of messing with them. But it is not that at all. I'm not going to spoil what it actually is, but I was just like, oh, this isn't a ghost movie. This isn't a demon movie. This is something different. And I wasn't expecting that. I thought that was a nice reveal and a nice surprise. I will say that like the aesthetic of what they're trying to do, if you've seen the trailer, you'll know what I'm talking about. They put like the dad's face on this kind of thing. At first, I found it to be off-putting and disturbing, but by the end, it kind of became comical. It didn't quite work for me towards the end of the film. But overall, yeah, it's your typical kind of moody, atmospheric, slow burn, horror film, and it's done pretty well. So, Daddy's Head, again, quite the unfortunate title. Daddy's Head, we're gonna give a B. Not too bad, that Daddy's Head. Yeah, I just said that. All right, last but not least, Caddo Lake. Yeah, this is a movie that got dropped on HBO Max, and man, this movie was surprising. This movie actually has a lot in common with the Netflix show Dark. So if you're a fan of that show, there's a lot of similarities. It's not like a straight comparison, but there are a lot of similarities between this and Dark. So if you're a fan of Dark, you should definitely check this one out. It'll be right up your alley. Yeah, this movie demands a lot of your patience. You don't quite know what's actually going on till like the last 30 minutes of the film. And when you actually, know what this movie is about and where it's going, it's just like, oh, it's such a cool surprise, such a cool reveal. But yeah, it does demand some patience. You're gonna have to wait till the last 30 minutes to figure out what this movie is. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like the characters are good. It's a good plot. There's a mystery early on, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. So it's not like it's a boring slog of a movie, because it's not. It's actually very entertaining. This is like a very dramatic horror film. So yeah, Caddo Lake was a lot of fun. It's, again, a cool surprise of where this movie actually goes. I was like, yeah, this is up my alley for sure. But yeah, Caddo Lake, we're gonna give B to Caddo Lake. All right, that wraps up part 2. Yeah, let me know if you agree with a lot of this or you disagree. I was only going to do 2 parts to this kind of series here of the horror films of 2024, but I think I actually might come back in December and do a part 3, because we got Nosferatu coming up, and there's still some horror films that I just haven't got a chance to see yet, and I would like to include, like Abigail. Someone requested, Devil's Bath. So there are still a couple horror films I need to get to. So I may come back in December to add a few more horror flicks, especially Nosferatu. We got to include Nosferatu. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of my list. Let me know what you think of horror so far this year. I'd love to know your thoughts. Until next time, I will see you on the next one.